So we had some stories.
We did. 3
Stories
lucky
were
ones.
told. Since the last time we spoke to you, Ben, you have completed and released a trilogy of novels.
Absolutely smashed them out.
How does that feel?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like when the final one, when I got a copy of that in my hands, when was that out? April 5th. Um, it felt massive because the whole thing, the release schedule for it was one novel was released every 5 months. But yeah, the first one's not yet a year old. June the 5th, November the 5th, April the 5th. So yeah, to have the whole thing completed, best part of 300,000 words across that trilogy just felt amazing. It was a hectic year. It felt like the only thing that I was doing. I've had such fun with it. It felt like I kind of really had gone back in time to capture those places. So yeah, but to actually get all three of them together, to see them together on my bookshelf looks absolutely fabulous.
That is a spicy amount of words, my friend.
It is. To be polished and finished
Mm.
and produced into three books in that time is such a feat. Well done. How did you maintain your motivation for that?
I think part of having the time scale, only having pretty much a year to do the whole thing, did mean that a lot of the time it was kind of like I had to do it, but the whole
Yeah.
time I did feel very kind of passionate about where it was going. Um, right from the start when I was plotting this out, the very first idea was that it would just be the one book, but then I very quickly realised that wasn't possible. It was too big a story, and each book is significantly different enough that it's kind of doing its own thing. So within each individual story, it was very much kind of a exploring these ideas at different times in Guy Fawkes' life, such as when he's a child. Like the first book is very much like a coming of age story. It's until he's around the age of 16. It starts with his birth. So there's a lot of kind of discovery there of kind of the world of demon hunters, but also about himself. The second novel then has him kind of moving further away from home. It starts in York, where Guy Fawkes was born, and most of the first novel is there. So with the second novel, it felt we could spread to different places. Almost from the second chapter, is heading off to Durham, and it feels like it's getting bigger. And I think with the second book, that's where there is the least history of Guy Fawkes. So what kind
Yeah.
of kept me going on that one was all of the possibilities that were there. There are no clear there's some times there where it's not exactly clear where he was, other than he went south, he went to London. It's possible he married. So all of these things I was able to kind of build into the story. And then for the third, it's kind of very end oriented because you're very much thinking about then the gunpowder plot, but that
Yeah.
happens in the second half of that book. So there was always these kind of great pieces that I was writing towards. Yeah, so I loved every moment of writing it.
So I've got to ask you just immediately off the back of that last bit. Are we? Does Catesby get a big role?
Yes, he does. Yeah. He appears first of all in the second book because it seems they worked together. A place called Cowdray House, quite close to Portsmouth. It seems that they met there first of all, and then when Guy Fawkes he travelled, he went to Europe for Spanish. When he returned, I think he was still in contact with Catesby and kind of brought into the conspiracy then. So he does play quite a major role in the bits and pieces in the second book, and very much so in the second half of the third book.
I think this is fascinating. So it sounds like your depth of knowledge on this is obviously enormous because you've written these books and heavily researched them. But you must be quite close to being a bit of an expert on, like as in like a scholarly expert on Guy Fawkes, not just a literary one.
I think yeah, I did do an awful lot of reading. There's some fantastic books that kind of led me down that path. One's called The Real Guy Fawkes, which had so many other sources in that was really helpful. But then I'm spinning all of this kind of demonology into it. So I read King James the First's book, Demonology, which kind of showed what somebody of that kind of level would think about demons. Somebody who had all of that power. So it's kind of odd that you'd link all of these things, that real history, and then these ideas which were so out there.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really important point there, because potentially not everyone would actually be aware of that. But at the time, the King of England and Scotland wrote a book on demonology whilst he was king. Like, what is that?
It's mad.
Yeah.
Basically a conversation between two gods as well, in the way that it's written. It's so bizarre.
Got to wonder if
people don't go in for that religious monarchy stuff anymore. Oh no.
Yeah.
But of course, famously, it's King James's Bible as well, isn't it? He was fully into it.
It's just fan fiction.
Looking up some of the things he is said to have said at the time, because you've also got a major part of it is the anti-Catholicism, and some of the things that he supposedly said. He for example, he had suggested he would be fair and moderate, first of all, and the Catholics had a lot of hope that he would be so. But then it's alleged that he said that if his son grew up to be, if he thought his son would grow up to be a papist, he would smother him with a pillow.
Oh, very Christian.
That does sort of echo a more kind of like recent, like a homophobic trend of masculinity, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, there's if my son grows up to be gay, I'll insert horrible thing here.
Yeah.
I mean, my old man once told me if I got a tattoo, he'd take it off with a Parmesan grater when I was a child. And now he's got to fucking catch me. Try it, old man. My sleeve wants a word.
If anyone needed an insight into why Nico is as funny as he is, it's because it's a defense mechanism against that shit.
I just outed myself fully on the podcast.
With a Parmesan grater.
That's the one. Are there any like Guy Fawkes facts that everyone is touting that now you're like, listen, bitch, that ain't how it works?
I've heard lots of people say different things about kind of about his death. Lots of people suggest that he was burnt to death, which is ridiculous. That didn't happen. He was supposed to be hanged, drawn, and quartered. But he fell off the scaffold, snapped his neck. So he didn't. He was dead before he was suffered the worst parts of that. Luckily, I guess.
Oh, he fell off the scaffold, did he?
Yeah. So he had been drawn, which is so much worse than I thought it could possibly be, behind a horse, face down, on a wooden frame. Writing that scene was rather gory. And then obviously you're going to be in a pretty horrific condition after that. He'd been tortured in the tower for months. So he was barely able to move. And they hang them from quite a height. They tell them it's as close to heaven as they're ever going to get. But then
savage.
I think the person who was supposed to be hanged before him had tried to jump from the scaffold in order to kill themselves and die before they were tortured in a worse way. But they ended up being cut down. But Guy Fawkes slipped and his neck snapped instantly, so he was I guess
good Lord,
saved a much worse death moments later, having his genitals cut out and burned in front of him. So.
Yeah, that's unpleasant. That bit. That's the bit that really people want to avoid where possible. I think the main one that I was aware of was that, and please let me know if this is false because I've just been carrying this around my head, was that he got racked whilst he was tortured, which meant that he could no longer stand because they'd actually like stretched him too far.
Yes,
and he had to be carried around
like Mike TV.
I didn't read anything to confirm that was true. There was lots of stuff about kind of horrific things that he definitely was put in a very small cage, so that he couldn't stand upright, and he was kind of contorted into that. Pretty much every torture method that was available then that they did use. The fact that he was able to sign any kind of name at all at the end of there was quite
Yeah,
miraculous.
that's the one that people often say, isn't it? Like because the signature is so scrawled and
Yeah.
horrid. He must have been completely messed up when he signed the confession.
It's likely
So-
his fingers were broken entirely at that point. So
Damn, his handwriting's still better than mine.
so there's obviously a lot of fact in there. If we did this as a percentile, right? Could we get that trilogy into the non-fiction section? Because there's more true stuff about Guy Fawkes in it than there is demon stuff. Because I would fight tooth and nail for that fucking campaign.
I think it'd be really interesting. Yeah. It's like the things that I found out, which is so fascinating, that I kind of thought, well, how much further down this road can I get? Like in the first book, he meets a character, Margaret Clitheroe, who was a real character in York, and her death is absolutely horrendous. So it had to feature in the book. She was pressed on Toll Bridge in
Oh, no.
York. Yeah, just basically two big stones underneath your back. They take off your front door, they put it on top of you, and then they keep putting very large stones on top until you enter a plea of some sort. So it's if you haven't confessed to something, if you've neither put in a guilty plea or an innocent plea, then they can do this to you. And that character became really kind of important in the piece, and I was kind of tempted to take that further and kind of investigate her character. I did visit her. There's a shrine to her on the Shambles in York. Yeah, fascinating story. Yeah,
Oh, is there?
yeah.
Very cool.
Basically,
I was going to.
where her
Yeah, go on, please.
she was a butcher. Well, her husband was, but she would have been involved in that. And where that shop was, because she was made a saint, because of she was protecting Catholics. That's what she wouldn't confess to. So now there is a shrine, and you can just kind of go in and sit there and think, wow, this is one of those places where Guy Fawkes would have been in here. She lived in this, above this place here. So that mix of kind of history with all of the demon nonsense I added in there is just fascinating.
And do you have to take your own front door to that, or have they got them in the gift shop?
I think so. They just tore it up and brought it there. Imagine, yeah. Make sure you're here at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. Bring your front door.
Bring
some
your front
rocks
door.
if you can.
Oh, baby, you're not going to believe it. I've left the fucking door at home.
Oh no, I'm not going to get to be executed today. Oh, absolutely horrendous. So that was actually a follow-up question, which was like,
Sorry,
during
I
that.
have to interrupt you.
Please do.
You know if you forget to take your PE kit at school, and it'd be like, here's a dirty old pair of shorts that someone left here in the 80s. Just imagine like a stack of other people's doors
or like
that have
some
already
like
been
old
used for squashing. Yeah.
Yeah, like old Roman doors or something. It's sort of left behind.
Sorry, please carry on.
So the question was, did you during that year, how many places did you visit? Like how many sort of field trips did you do to go and stand where Guy Fawkes stood?
So York was the main one when I was writing the first book. I couldn't do as many as I wanted. I mean, the third book when he goes into Europe, kind of invented the idea that he went to Morocco as well, because there was an Anglo-Moroccan alliance at the time, and that's where England got their part of their gunpowder supplies. So it'd been lovely to visit there, but the only other place of interest I went to was Brimham Rock, very strange rock formation in Yorkshire, because he lived very close there at one time. So I thought, well, I can take him to this interesting place and have an episode there. So yeah, that was and just kind of trying to get into the mindset of how somebody from this must have been 1590s when he was there, would have felt about these strange rock formations, because they seem so unnatural. So that was kind of the only other kind of field trip that I was able to do, unfortunately.
Still very cool. Still very cool.
Very.
So, in terms of the process of writing it, would you say there was anything that stood out that you learned from the process of writing a trilogy
I
in
think
such a short space of
learning
time?
very good habits in terms of just getting the word count done some days. So the third book, I think I wrote 90,000 words of that in August. Because as I teach August, I'm not at school, and it was a case of, right, I know that this is
Of course,
due
yeah.
maybe end of October, that one, the first draft with the publisher. So it's a case of, right, if I get all of this done, then I can sort out that part. So just in terms of getting into really good practices, being able to just kind of hit that word count, and just kind of planning ahead in advance in a sensible way. I think it really kind of got me into a professional mode of doing this and getting it done when I needed to. It's both. It was nice to have those deadlines. I do kind of feel glad I don't have any at the moment, and I can relax a bit.
Mm.
Yeah.
So what was the rationale behind the tight deadline, the year to
It
get them
was
out?
partially from me and partially from the publisher. Um, Quite a lot of series are independently published by small presses do try to keep the momentum going by kind of having 5 months, 6 months, 7 months between them, just so they can keep that kind of readership kind of following on with the story. I think also there is with any series this fear that it's not going to be finished. So sometimes there's become a trend of people not buying a series, not buying into it unless they know they're going to be able to see it through. So I think that was kind of part of the rationale. If it's
Oh,
kind of
I
all
see.
out
I see.
there, then we can kind of keep marketing after that point.
Hmm.
And from my perspective, um,
Did
from
you
my
did you find?
perspective, it's also a case of,
Yeah.
right, this is an idea that's pretty out there. I don't really want it to take up the next 5 years of my life, so we'll just go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you didn't balk at all when you heard that. You were like,
Yeah,
no, I
yeah,
can
it
do this
was
in a
it
year.
was one of those things. I kind of looked carefully at the calendar. It kind of fell across so that I'd had 2 summers across it. I think yeah, because it was 5 months between each novel, and then kind of, yeah, 5 months leading into the first one roughly. So yeah, so I was writing the first one summer, and the final one summer after. So kind of other holidays, Easters and Christmases, I was able to do kind of
Okay.
bulk of writing then, and the editing passes, it would then be kind of with the publisher for a month, and it would come back to me, and I'd have another month to look over all of their notes there and kind of anything else I wanted to change. So it was a really nice process with them. I really trusted them to look over it and kind of push me in the right direction, pick up little things that weren't quite working. So yeah, it just seemed to work really nicely in terms of that relationship.
Just before we move on from Guy Fawkes, should we just tell people where they can get hold of these
It's
books again? Where's the best
I think the
place
best
to
place
buy
to
this
get it
book?
at the moment is from
These books.
Amazon. It is available on other um, platforms, but it's Amazon is the one that's most reliable at the moment in those terms. So you've got the first book is
Okay.
gone blank. A clangor of bells. The second book is A Dream of Demons, and the
There it
third
is.
one, A Diabolical Plot. Yes.
I had to. You
Oh,
had
and
to
the
get plot
spin-off,
in there somewhere, didn't you?
the
That was
spin-off,
So
the Guy
been
Fawkes
coming
Demon
after
Hunter
you.
annual. Spent
so. This is where I was going to go next about your annuals because I was also going to
so
ask about the Nicolas Cage one. So please tell us
last
about the Guy Fawkes one.
winter. So the third book was submitted to the publisher um end of start of November. So then I kind of had a month where I wasn't writing anything. I thought, hang on, that means I'll be doing this again December. I know I'm going to put out an annual. This idea of how it's a ridiculous idea, but I love doing it. It's kind of full of like puzzles. There are some stories in there. There's like a choose your own adventure type Guy Fawkes story in there where there's several paths that lead through. And yeah, it was just one of those kind of silly ideas. It's like, hang on, I want an annual. I want an annual for my series. So I just kind of I independently did that and released it, and it's great fun.
So, what's it like to be that prolific?
Yeah, honestly, I just love it as like the fact that I remember annuals being a huge deal when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Like Christmas, you'd get a couple of annuals. It was always Book of Guinness World Records
Yeah.
as well. But like, keep burning that torch, man. I absolutely love that.
Yeah,
Do more of it.
it was.
Do it for just make them for everything.
I kind of want to. It's addictive. Yeah, I'm not really very good at stopping, even when I don't have deadlines. There's always something else I want to be working on.
Oh, do you want to make a Dead Man's Whiskey one?
Yes.
Or a tiny bookcase one?
Choose your own adventure, Nico from both Tiny Bookcase and Dead Man's Whiskey.
If you want to go on tour, go to page 78. If you want to stay home and edit the podcast, go to page 92.
Oh yeah, they're a lot of fun. I kind of want to write a book that looks like CFAX/teletext.
Oh hell yeah!
It's just this kind of, yeah. I just think if it just looked like that, and you could use the choose your own adventure thing with that kind of blocky kind of look to it, launch it as a website at the same time. Yeah, so there's always
Absolutely, do it, man.
Do you remember? Oh god, we're all going to show our ages now. Did you guys used to, like, if you were going on a family holiday, if you were going away anywhere, you could like look at if there were traffic delays and stuff on CFAX, but it was so slow
Yeah.
to get through teletext and look at things. It's like, are there trains running?
Yeah, because there'd be something like 24 pages, wouldn't there? And they would cycle through one at a time. If you looked away for like 8 seconds, you'd miss it or something. And yeah,
If you happen to live in Zurich, you were fucked.
yeah.
I think you might be showing your age. I think, Nick, actually, because I did not use this at all. At all.
Black screen, green text. What time to be alive?
It might actually just be because I was raised under a bridge in Cumbria, so that's potentially more likely. So, Nicolas Cage, I need to ask you about this puzzle book.
Oh.
And my question is, what the fuck? I love it, but why?
I get obsessions. I get obsessional with stuff. So I've watched what's the film? The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. And it's a cracking piece of entertainment, and just kind of the way.
It's very funny.
And I just started watching a lot of strange Nicolas Cage films, and then I thought I had fun making my Guy Fawkes annual. Maybe I could just make a puzzle book full of Nicolas Cage based puzzles, and my copy arrived only yesterday, and it looks great. I'm so happy with how it's come out. Yeah, it was, again, that was about 6 weeks work actually on the puzzles, a bit longer, just kind of the framing and the artwork that went with that. But yeah, it's just.
Please tell me that there's a puzzle where you have to help the bees find his face.
No, but the back pages count the bees.
Hey, I'll take
It's how many bees. Yeah. There is a Wicker Man puzzle where he is in the middle of the Wicker Man, and you have to try and find is there a route out of the Wicker Man? Yeah.
Oh, God, you speak my language.
So just so people can find this and buy it, this is the unofficial and unauthorized Nicolas Cage puzzle book. Over 100 pages of puzzles. So it's got Cage Doku, Cage word searches, Cage anagrams, Cage mazes. Oh, what a lovely thing to have done. I really enjoy it.
I'd put that at the top of my CV, honestly.
Yeah, I'd like to kind of play around with some more when I'm not doing writing projects. Just kind of put another one out there. So yeah, just kind of different ideas and a whole range of them. They're just fun to do.
So what is next for you then? What's next
So,
for you going forwards in terms of your projects?
In June 23rd, I have a story appearing in an anthology called Horny, which is stories of it's erotica meets demons. I'd not written erotica before. It's the same publisher that I've been with, the Guy Fawkes trilogy, Shadow Spark Publishing, and they put out anthologies every now and then. And they said about a year ago, how about we do a demon erotica anthology? And I mean, it's totally out of my comfort zone. So over the last couple of months, I've been kind of writing and editing that. So the story I've written is about an incubus who is a busker, and the story is called Incubusker.
Oh, that pleases me.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure how it's going to fit in with the rest of the stories in the collection, but yeah, I ended up reading quite a lot of erotica to kind of get my head into that. A collection by Ramsey.
Oh my
It's
god!
research.
Did you have to wank hide yourself into being part of an anthology?
I read a collection. This is such a bad name. It's called Scared Stiff by Ramsey.
Oh, come on!
Yes,
By Ramsey Campbell. Ramsey Campbell's such a lovely man. But the fascinating thing about that collection is the stories from. It's a collection of a lot of his erotic stories that go back to like the 1980s when a lot of this stuff was really taboo. So there's a great essay in the front of it by Clive Barker where he talks about kind of how taboo this stuff is, but it seems moderately tame by kind of today's standards. But it was it's kind of nice to put yourself out of your
they had sex, but he was a skeleton.
but take yourself out of your comfort zone
Yeah.
with what you write sometimes. So it's one of those that I probably won't push hard on various social media platforms because certain people.
Easy now.
Easy. We'll push the fuck out of it.
I'll have to deny that one. Yeah.
We're going to tweet it 15 times a day.
Just never let you forget it.
Yeah.
Just keep pushing it. Fantastic. No, that's really exciting that you've expanded your repertoire in that way. I think that's really brave, really cool.
All this talk of pushing hard and expansions. Good grief.
Really engorged your profile.
Oh dear.
Oh, your profile is veritably throbbing. What can I say? I've got an inverse to a question we've asked you before. And I think it's going to be fun. So, we've asked you previously if you could adapt any book into another medium, what would you pick? But if you were given carte blanche to, rather than an unlicensed Nicolas Cage product, but you can turn any movie property into a novel or book series of some kind, what would you want to turn into being on the page?
Oh, that's it. I think it would be a lot of fun to do some kind of adventure kind of things, like Indiana Jones kind of stuff. Take that and just kind of make up a whole bunch of new adventures and stuff, where it is just kind of all of these places around the world, whips cracking and losing hats, and I think that'd be a hoot. Yeah.
Would you go straight novel?
Puzzle book. Not novel. Maybe that's an interesting question. It'd be great to just adapt things into kind of like you choose your own adventure kind of stuff, because weirdly I have at home a Muppet Treasure Island choose your own adventure, which made my daughter cry once because he didn't complete the adventure. But just there aren't enough of those. So let's take that property and just.
We're never making out of people money.
That's there's so much to unpack there, my friend. So it was a choose your own adventure Muppet.
Based
adventure.
upon the Muppet Treasure Island, and within two
Wow.
choices, you could end the story and just kind of not go on the adventure. No, I think you can.
Oh, not even
Yeah, so
going.
you can. I think it's quite meta. I think within this story, you are reading a copy of Treasure Island. One of the choices is just to stop reading the
Oh.
book. Very meta.
Fuck
Yeah.
me.
Was Jim Henson involved in it this at any point, or was this
That would be
post-death?
post-death, because that followed. Treasure Island followed
Post-death, yeah.
Muppet Christmas Carol, and
Oh, did it?
yeah.
I wasn't sure about the order of thing.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Huh.
you could put more Muppets in it.
Interesting.
Though. Anything with more Muppets in.
So-
I've been saying for years I'd love to do a Muppet
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings. I think it would be the best thing ever.
What's the guy in Hollywood that likes Muppets and made the Muppets movies, and he's a
Jason
comedy actor.
Segel.
Jason Segel, yeah. You could probably get him on board. Send him a DM.
He's so tall, he'd make an excellent Frodo.
And the joke would be that he insisted that he had to play Frodo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you can just stop reading the book at any point. So we don't often get to ask this one, but I feel like it would be a really interesting insight, especially because this is your third time on the podcast. But if you were to look back at your younger self, so potentially when we were at university and you were taking creative writing modules and sort of getting some formal education on how to construct stories and stuff, what advice would you give that person to try and shortcut to where you are now?
Get stuff out there sooner. Get to know the community further. I think that there's a lot of things which are going on which are quite hard to find out about sometimes, like the convention circuit and whatnot. I didn't realize quite how big it was and how welcoming everyone there would be. So just kind of getting to meet people because I've had so much kind of good advice and so met so many people who've been so friendly, just saying, well, try this small press, try this book. So just getting to know people through that way, because it wasn't really until Dead Branches was coming out that I even knew about some of these things that were going on. I went to HorrorCon, which is something that happens in Sheffield, which is much more film based. But there I met somebody who runs a small press, and he said, "Well, there's this event going on in Derby in a couple of months. Go along to that." And it just kind of opened my eyes up to how many people there are out there, how big the community is. Just getting involved in that sooner would have been brilliant.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting advice. This is something that I know we've spoken about off mic a little bit, but obviously Nico and I have not been to any conventions yet. But I think it absolutely has to be in our near future. Largely because we enjoy talking to authors so much and sort of picking their brains on mic that it just seems silly when they're all gathering themselves in one place not to descend
so
upon
it's and then kind of the opportunity to meet more people. I mean, certainly plenty of your guests I've kind of met at different events. So
yeah. Have you ever introduced yourself to one of our guests, being like, "Hey, we've both been on the bookcase"?
It's a conversation I had with Kit
or...
Power. Kit, Kit's great.
Sweet.
I was actually
Kit's
on a panel with Kit at FantasyCon. So it was kind of nice to kind of talk about that shared experience. Yeah.
Very cool. Very glad to hear it. Well, it's been absolutely delightful having you on again.
It's been an absolute pleasure. I can't believe the time has just kind of flown by.
Oh, don't even get me started. 3 years just disappeared from my life. I don't know who I need to beat the fuck out of to get them back, but I intend to at some point.
So, should we get you back in a year when your next trilogy's done? That sounds about right, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'll get started now.
Yeah, get cracking. Top notch. Right. Well, before we let you go, let's just tell people again where they can follow you, where they can buy your books, and should buy your books.
So the website is benjaminlangley.co.uk. that is updated with. Sometimes I use it as a blog and just kind of write about what I'm writing. But there's always news on there about kind of what I'm working on. On Twitter, _J_Langley. Instagram as Benjamin Langley writer, and the same at Facebook. So yeah, you can find me on all of those places. Sometimes busier than others on them, sometimes more active than others on them, but that's where you'll find me.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again, and we will see you shortly, I think.
Great, yeah, thank you very much.
Pleasure to have you, man.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of The Tiny Bookcase.
Remember to subscribe, otherwise you're going to miss out on the future fun.
Also, tell a friend. If you like this episode, link them to it.
We'd be tremendously grateful. You can follow us on Twitter at BookcaseTiny, Facebook at The Tiny Bookcase, and Instagram at BookcaseTiny for updates. Speaking of supporting the podcast, well, magic can only take one so far. The Tiny Bookcase is supported by the generosity of its patrons. Those kind souls have really kept my belly full the last year. Let's cast a spell for them, shall we? For magnificent beardery, let's cast the Chinicus folliculale spell on Gary Laird. For rich ginger tones on the scalp, let us cast the Orangi Hedondo spell for Scott Byrne. And for general fabulousness, why not the Ooh La La, How's Your Mother spell on Matthew McLaren?
How do you come up with that shit, man?